have three.
Wonderful. I'd like to call to order the January 2026 Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Board meeting. Before we get started to approve the agenda, I just wanted to call out Michael. Are you a visitor? You mind identifying yourself if you don't mind? Michael, online.
Maybe we can circle back when it gets to visitor comments and see.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so first motion on the agenda. Do we have approval of the agenda?
Second.
Wonderful. Any questions or discussions about the agenda before we move forward? Sounds good. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Abstain say abstain. Moving to item number 3 on the agenda, the consent agenda. Again, this is to be approved with one motion. We can get a motion going and then still hold discussion. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Perfect. Any questions or discussion around the consent
agenda? Thought I had one here. I'm just opening up to remind myself. The Coleman Creek flood reduction change order number 4. The change order is for $17,278.25. They're showing on page 56 that the total related cost is $28,165, and I'm just curious, that discrepancy, are they bearing that to themselves? Is that significant?
Or is it just for a future change order?
Again, page 56.
No, they're not. The difference was there was the cost for disposal was different than, so there was a bid item, but it ended up being, they found some contaminated material.
Yep.
So this is the difference between the additional cost. Some of that was covered under their bid.
Yeah, some of them, because they did provide the original bid.
Yep.
And this change order does not necessarily reflect their original bid in a sense, because they said they would do the job for X. I don't remember what that was. And now this is an additional amount, in part due to the contamination, the debris and whatever that they ran into in the excavation, and then had to be stored initially on site and then trucked to a suitable disposal facility. And so they're asking for 1,700 or 17,000, excuse me, and I'm okay with that. I'm just, I saw the 28,000 and wondered what that was.
What I was thinking, and I have the same comment, but as I reflect on it, it looks like the quantity in tons for the exported contaminated soil is a little different. So it looks like we're only paying for line item 1 in page 56 at a reduced quantity. But I have the same question. I couldn't make any of those numbers match. Again, I'm on the same page with Mark. I think we have, we should definitely pay for this. Just wanted to make sure the numbers were right, or is there another change order coming?
There is not another change order that we're anticipating at this point in time. They do have some work to do this spring out there. They have part of the berm along PCU Pond was constructed below or outside of tolerance. So they do have to be out there again, but at this point we don't anticipate any additional change orders.
Maybe it's more of a just take an action and look at the numbers again. We should pay for this. I am curious to build on that. We typically bore. Did we see any of this contaminated soil and boring?
Did not. see it in our site investigations prior to. We did know that this, the location of this project was near a historic dump site, so we knew that there was potential, but we didn't anticipate that where we were going to be excavating, we would have encountered it.
Is it that the quote from 923 missing that would help?
It's really, maybe Mark, you can tell me if you see it differently. It's just the difference in the number in 56 versus page 54. That's really that's the only.
Yeah, I mean, in their quote, they
I
quote
think it-
350 tons and
Yeah.
actually it's 335.
335, and that's what I think the difference is. And I think we're just paying for the top
Yeah.
now that I've looked at it close. But that's all.
The
We're paying for all of it. It was a line item bid, so the line item for disposable material was,
We just didn't.
roughly
so
17,000 or whatever, and then the
We didn't
difference.
pay for testing, poly storage, and extra sand.
So
That's what I've gathered.
the item on, or the page 56 is their estimate. What we pay for is the load, is based on load tickets,
Yeah.
what's actually measured. And it's tough to read because it gets cut off. That's your page 57 and 58. The 330, 350 on page 50. 335.5 on page 58 is consistent with the quantity that's listed on page 54.
Okay.
So they provided an estimate. We said, yep, your price and your estimate is good, but we'll pay for it when you take it to the landfill and they give you tickets. They measure it when
that's
you
why
load
they-
it. So that's what the tickets were put in, and that's what we would pay for. So what they actually disposed is consistent with the 17,000 number.
Comfortable with that.
Okay. Yeah, just going back to page 56, I see there was a date on that. Yeah, that's 9/23/25 quote. It supersedes the previous quote. Their date is 9/24/25. So one day later, but it looks like from those proposal, that was happening in December.
That's right, because they hauled the material offsite and stored it at their facility.
Yeah.
So they could keep working. The landfill wouldn't accept it until they had submitted the additional testing.
Right, okay.
So they kept it at their facility until December, until those test results came through. Then they disposed of it. We didn't want to pay for it until we had the tickets. So we didn't pay for it until we had the ticket, so we knew exactly how much they were disposing.
Okay, so the difference between those, the item on page 56 is kind of an estimate.
Exactly.
And then what was submitted for the change order is their actual cost.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Wonderful. Do I have, oh no, I already did the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Consent agenda passes. Moving to visitor comments. We'll try one more time with Michael on the Zoom. Are you here to make a comment? Or are you associated to a permit? Tina, do you have a recommendation on how we should proceed?
I think we can just keep going.
Okay,
I'll send him a message in chat too.
that would be helpful. Thank you, Tina. I'm going to make an assumption then that there are no visitor comments, and we'll proceed to item number 5, the regulatory program.
All right, there's one permit that was removed from consent due to a wetland buffer variance request, but the project is a Ramsey County reconstruction of county roads in Roseville and Little Canada. The actual reconstructed area is relatively small. There's a lot of the corridor that will be mill and overlay. The applicants asking to use available bank credits and the cities of Roseville and Little Canada have agreed to that in writing. And then where the project, part of the project is draining to, there will be some modifications to a pond on Marketplace Drive to the north of County Road C to meet rate control requirements. The variance request is for temporary wetland buffer disturbance. The impacts are temporary in that the existing roadway in some areas doesn't meet the wetland buffer requirements. And so they're not proposing to increase the footprint of the roadway or the sort of turf boulevard in those areas, but they may be disturbed for like curb replacement and things like that. So because it's close to some of the wetland areas, they've submitted that buffer request, but no permanent changes to the wetland buffer. And just a note, since you guys see these requests a lot, we are looking at modifying our rule language to streamline this process so that temporary wetland buffer impacts wouldn't require a specific variance request, but that we could still have restoration requirements, like very specific laid out in rule that we could hold applicants to, but not make them go through sort of the rigmarole of the variance. But any proposed changes to the rules would come before the board as well. So I just want to let you know that I'm looking into that because I know there have been kind of questions about why are we seeing so many of these pass. So
Well, frankly, that's just how it's going to be in a built out area. And as long as they plan
Yeah.
for
Right.
requests.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Getting back to my notes. Unless I missed it, I didn't see, so there were, if I recall correctly, there was a reference made that there would be minor soil disturbance, curb replacement. Obviously, the mill and overlay of the pavement is probably not going to have any soil exposure, but there would be some minimal soil exposure within the buffer, and it's going to be temporary. I'm wondering if we had asked them, or would we ask them, could we ask them to have a, you need the term now, double BMP, you know,
Yeah.
along the area that, I mean, it's fairly small,
Yeah.
but to minimize the potential, even though it's not a small amount,
Yeah.
of any sediment.
Yeah, they'll be required to do 2 lines of perimeter control because they're within 50 feet of a wetland
Okay,
area.
so
So
it is something that they would already be doing.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I think I'm getting these projects confused now, but I think one of the special provisions might be that they need to add that to their plan set.
I didn't
Or
see-
they acknowledged it.
I didn't see that.
Okay, I might be
mentioned
thinking of
as
a
a special
different one.
provision,
Yeah.
which is kind of.
Oh, yeah. The third special provision, yeah.
Oh, did I miss it?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and that's kind of consistent. That's the requirement of the state permit too, so.
Yeah. All right, I just missed it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nicole, just a question. You had mentioned that you're looking at streamlining.
Yeah.
So that we wouldn't have as many coming through. Is that a trend, or is that something you're seeing throughout the watershed district? Oh, first, I do appreciate that. Thank you. But is that also kind of where the watersheds are going to kind of facilitate the process for our partner?
Yeah.
Folks that are
You
doing
know,
construction here?
I can't speak for other watersheds. I know probably the most about Capital Region, and they have significantly less wetlands than us, so I don't think they get nearly as many variance requests for disturbance of buffer areas. I don't know. I just know that for consistently for years, we've had a lot of these variance requests, and so we've discussed internally, like, because there's always a ton of back and forth too with applicants about how to craft a variance request and how to show temporary disturbance and figures and things like that. And, so we've talked internally about how to make this easier, both for staff and for applicants, but then also have very specific restoration requirements that we can still enforce, like getting that native seed established, which can take sometimes multiple seasons. So we don't want to really like relax those standards that we're doing for post-construction inspection, but for the permit acquisition process, especially when part of the variance is like, well, the road's already there and we're just redoing the road and it's already not meeting our buffer standards, then it just seems like a lot of paperwork for something that we can accomplish the same via inspection.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's very pragmatic. So
Yeah,
thank you.
so.
And we're going to be talking about buffer and technologies associated with such as per the action list. So, any further questions, clarifications before we go? Do I have a motion to approve permit 2604?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, I'm going to skip discussion and say all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Okay, moving to item 5B.
Yeah, this is our monthly memorandum. As you're aware, we had a sort of a significant drop in inspections because winter came at the right time this year. The last few years we've not seen the start to winter like this, where we've actually had snow cover. So it kind of stopped some projects in their tracks. So we had a lot less inspections, also 0 violations, which is great. And then a list of meetings, if you have any questions about that or any of the project updates provided.
Really appreciate the multiple year trend look. I know we've always talked about it. I appreciate the 3-year trend.
Oh yeah, the annual report. Yeah, I can speak to that as well.
No. I don't have a question. I just, things look, I didn't see any clear outliers visually.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had a question, comment on that annual comparison as
Sure.
well. Very helpful. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And once you've seeing it incorrectly, I found it interesting that the number of violations decreased by nearly half this past year. And considering that there were more inspections,
Less inspections.
was it less?
Yeah.
Okay, less. Some very complex projects, challenging weather. It just, I thought it was interesting that, down by half. And is that due in part to just circumstances of the number of inspections, or is it due maybe to, hey, some of these permittees are kind of getting it? Are we doing something better in terms of education? We've got more staff, resources. Has that been helpful?
Yeah, I can have maybe Mary speak to the drop in violations. We did have, I guess I don't know the actual math, but maybe a 20% or over 100 less inspections this year in comparison to last year. So for better or worse, that's part of it. But I don't know, Mary, if you had any other insight as to the drop in the actual just violation numbers.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a trend in very rainy seasons where people did their due diligence to protect the site. And then we kind of have those act of God rain events where there's not much you can do to prevent an offsite impact. I feel like in those instances, we're a bit more lenient with a site as long as they can get it fixed up well, report it properly, work with us to get it kind of more armored for the next rain event. We're a bit more understanding of it was pretty hard to prevent, bad things from happening. So I feel like even with the intense rain events, we were kind of in that bucket a bit more of, wow, that was crazy rain event. What can we do to prevent that from happening the next large rain event? So quite a bit of that. And then, yeah, as you said, we had some large sites like the Heights. Took up a lot more of my time, but it's still one report that I produce per site at the Heights. So like it took a lot of my time, but ultimately it results in one non-compliant report or, so that might skew the number a little bit too.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I know at this time last year when we were looking at these annual recaps, and I think the year prior when we were having drier years, we were seeing a lot of like complacency. And interestingly, when it's raining more, people seem to be more on maintenance because frankly they have to. But
Mhm.
we were seeing a lot of violations in these dry years because contractors were like, it hasn't rained in 3 weeks, I'm not going to fix the silt fence. So we were handing out violations for having something go unrepaired for weeks at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Nicole, that I think the repercussion of not keeping up with it is much more real in a rainy season. It can start actually impacting their accessibility to the site and ability to get work done. So I think there's a bit more understanding of, oh yeah, like I gotta stay on top of this.
I mean, in my eyes, I was looking at percent of active sites and percent of inspections found, and that seemed fairly consistent looking year over year, not like huge jumps. But yeah, I mean, it does rainy year, good maintenance. It sounds good.
Yeah, and I think that it is in the chart. I guess I didn't note it. Looks like the number of verbal warnings has probably increased just a tad, which is I think reflected what you were saying,
Yeah.
Aaron. And I fully support that. I mean, the reality is, you got to do the follow up on violation. I mean, there's a lot of work. Ultimately, we want the resource protected, and so just issuing a violation isn't necessarily always the right choice. Verbal warnings,
Right.
Yet,
Yeah.
compliance is maybe better all around. So
Yeah, like Nicole was saying, it's when you feel you're being ignored in a dry season, you kind of go, okay, this was easy to do. I think we can escalate to enforcement quickly. When they did do what they were supposed to do, but there was still offset impacts, I feel like there's a little bit more compassion there. And that I think was kind of the case a lot this year.
nice support. Thanks. Good work.
Yeah, any other questions about sort of the trends or I think the project types over 2024 were similar in that the majority of the projects were residential. Yeah, I know in past years we've seen, heavy school reconstruction or addition years. We've seen heavy apartment building. Right now we have a little more single family residential going on in our district. For a while there was senior living everywhere. So it's just interesting what the construction trends are too.
I have one more comment. In the list of meetings, there's a mention that there was a meeting or at least some discussion about the new database.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to hear that the database is progressing. And I think this is going to be something that's very helpful. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, I don't know if it's appropriate at this time because it's in the list. I'll bring it up now, but if we can maybe put it on the action log, in any case, at some point in the appropriate future, that we have a demonstration or a presentation or whatever on what the database actually is enabling us to do and kind of how it works.
Yeah.
Don't want to get too long out on it, but
yeah,
we do that. Yeah.
Follow up.
Yeah, Ashley is spearheading that. So she's working with Houston using their MS Forefront product. So I think the idea is that we'll have something to kind of test over this summer, early fall, and then have it in place by the end of this year.
Yeah, it wasn't really clear exactly how far along the development and implementation is.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate.
Yeah, we have
it'd be great to. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ashley's sharing that with them. Yeah, Ashley, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Just kidding. Yeah. Maybe
No,
Deb.
nothing to add. That's the timeline. It's gonna take quite a bit of lift from us we're pulling together information to send to Houston for them to kind of build it out, so don't have to keep going back. But yeah, Paige is right on that timeline of fully operational and switching over by end of year.
So are they having to develop some new modules that they haven't already done?
No, but all of the modules will be customized for what we want.
Yeah, okay. So it's adapting to the way you get the business.
Yeah. So essentially we'll provide them with kind of what we currently use and how we want it to kind of act. And so it's pretty similar to all the modules are similar process. So they just have to tweak the coding so that it'll do all the right little whatever coding needs to do to make it talk and make reports.
Cool, thank you.
Mhm.
Let's continue moving. Stewardship Grant Program, item 6, blank.
And actually, they have your report.
Yes, so sorry about that.
You're good. We heard you were sick. I just had to give you a poke.
Yeah, the week was kind of a blur. But yeah, you'll note there's not much to note on it. We had a couple of maintenance grants that were existing grants that were amended for higher amounts, just because the maintenance they were doing costed more than they had initially anticipated a few years ago. So I think that's the only thing to know about that cost change or that dollar amount. And then I'll just note this will be reformatted to include those other categories for like the chloride and the partner grant and those things. So it might look a little different in the coming months so that we can more accurately display or even more simply display what those grants and those dollars look like. But that's it.
Awesome. Any questions for Ashley?
Yeah, Ashley, may I ask, when are the 2026 community grants going live?
Putting final touches on those documents, and then those should be live here in the next week or so.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, we already got a few people asking about them.
Any other questions for Ashley? Okay. Moving to item number 7, there is no action item, so moving straight to item number 8, Tori, attorney report.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all tonight. Nothing much to report from our office. We've just been working on a few contract reviews for the projects that were granted at the December meeting. We have also worked on preparing the public notice for your annual meeting in March. So we'll put out the public notice soon here with bids to be due in February, and you'll have your annual meeting in March. If there's any questions for me, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you.
For Tori? Awesome. Thank you, Tori. All right, transitioning to number 9, board discussion topics. I have something very similar to what Mark mentioned earlier. I just want to, as we add it to the action plan, maybe just more so what's our database data strategy type of conversation. I think it could just be a conversation. Because I think databases are wonderful. They house the data. The data is the rich stuff that we're sitting and using and planning to automate, especially as you read through some of the project statuses. I'm super excited to see the automation for like the Keller Weir and things to that effect. All that kind of born with data. So that's how I just broaden that action item, if you don't mind, and it would group mine and Mark's kind of nicely together. Again, I don't think there's anything to prepare. I think it would just be a good thing to talk as we enter the planning cycle.
Sounds good. I'll add that.
Thanks, Tina. Any other topics? Discuss. Very cool. Moving right along. Item number 10A. That you. No, just kidding. We can, you know, Gravy, what we can do is we can just open up for discussion if that's easier. You don't have to.
That's fine.
So just as a reminder for new reports and presentations, these are mainly for information. Obviously, discussion questions are encouraged, but they're mainly for information. On the this one was from the workshop before. We had requested just to see what the outline might look like, and then I made another request to Tina about putting some of the other plans together in a folder. I didn't get a chance to review all those. I just picked one, but the want to open it up for questions. Did it add clarity? Did it reflect what you guys concluded at that last December workshop meeting? Maybe those are some good ways to start the discussion based off what was drafted.
So a couple of comments on. I thought the organization is looking good. It's you know, in part based on the current plan, but there are some new things coming in, and I think that it's viewed as in the right kind of organizational context, relating things together. I think the themes we talked about during the workshop are reflected in the organization. So I think that looks great. Digging a little more, you know, some of the issue statements, I would probably want to toy with some of that language, but I don't think there's probably a need to do that at this point. Unless you'd want, you know, those kinds of comments, Greg, I could probably do that, you know, offline with.
That's a good question. Just let's pause on that. How would you like to receive more of the like wordsmithy comments?
I think the offline is great. As you alluded to, that right now the issue statements are just provided as kind of an example to help indicate like what what rises to the level of that like sub issue category.
Yep.
But you're right. There will be more opportunities to get into the details of that, the examples given and that sort of thing. So yeah, we will get to the wordsmithing on that. But if you have ideas at this stage, by all means, please share them. I mean, happy to do that offline, and we can incorporate that feedback as we develop a more complete draft of that section.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, you guys can all send me, if you have comments, you can send them to me and then I'll share with Greg and we can work through those. Like Greg said, I mean, from you guys at this point, we need higher level.
Yeah.
You know, the staff hasn't even wordsmithed this stuff yet, so we'll get there.
That sounds great. Thanks, Tina.
I'd like to just have a couple comments, starting with the overarching themes. Yes, I thought climate was definitely number one on my list. It introduces all the uncontrolled variability that we have to deal with. And then the science, science informed, we have to be pragmatic. And on the partnership and collaboration, I think that is something that we expect and then we hope for from all of our partners. The one I'm not quite sure it deserves to be an overarching theme in its own category is the DEIA, because in my thinking, isn't this already included, kind of embedded in what we do in partnerships? I mean, we engage the neighborhoods, we engage the residents. Is this, unless, so this is a challenge that I had for myself.
So you're thinking, Stephanie, that it's embedded in the partnerships and collaboration?
Yes, I do think it is. It needs to be embedded. It needs to be kind of the fabric of what we consider as we do our projects. I mean, this is Roosevelt Homes was a huge part of, I think, this reflection of the foresight of this group to go out and seek out these neighborhoods. But I don't think that it directs how we work. not to the same level that it's, so climate is a constraint, right? It's huge variation. We can't do without it. We do have to make our decisions science informed. Otherwise, we are just pulling at straws and not doing things very mindfully. And again, this organization is well known for its modeling, the flooding risk analysis, and definitely the partnerships and collaborations for effectively using the funds that we have available to us. And I think that's the part that is embedded is the DEIA is working with the neighborhoods, working with the strength of the communities that we have, and seeking out those partnerships where we see they may not come to us, but we'll need to seek them out because that's where the problems, if that's indeed the source of or the area where the problems need to be addressed. So.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. I think the only thing that makes me wonder is, it also guides our internal work, like not with our partners or, the way that our staff functions and under organizational. And I think we can build it into those sections as well. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what others think about that.
I get where you're going.
Oh, that was my only comment is exactly what Tina said. If there's any organizational internal guiding through DEI, that maybe it gets put in multiple places.
I'd be more direct to that point. I think DEI is just how it should be embedded in the DNA, but it should be called out to be prioritized. To what you're saying, does it belong explicitly here as a major overarching theme? I think if it's peppered everywhere else, I'd be comfortable not having it as a theme. If we don't have it in the other places organizationally, partnerships and collaboration, even considering diversity, equity, inclusion on climate resilience, because there's been showing of lower socioeconomic classes not being able to pay attention to it. As long as it's peppered other places, I'd be comfortable. That's how I would point it out. I don't disagree with what you're saying because it really is the how and the approach that we take for a lot of these themes. That's kind of what I'm gathering from you, right? Is that fair? It feels like it's something that's more overarching is what it feels to me. Let's put it this way, like we have to consider it.
Yes, it is a necessity of how we approach and how we prioritize our work. This is, this is, I'm going to say it's not, it goes beyond socioeconomic. It goes into, the diversity of thought, the diversity of who we are considering. It's not just a kind of a.
Maybe as I propose or think through what you're going through, maybe it doesn't belong in per se issues and goals. It's just something that we consider. I still think it could be one of those, we approach things with this in mind, and we could find a place or a home.
I think it is part of the values. Whether or not, this is a value statement. I don't think it's an overarching theme.
I think that's a good point.
That climate is not part of our values, right? Climate resilience is not part of our values. It's something we have to consider. And one of the other things that I think we have to consider is definitely another constraint that we have to deal with, which is our existing landscape. That these are things that are out of our control, perhaps. But as I looked at it, it's like around 40% impervious surfaces. That's something we have to deal with.
That's unique to us.
So that's something that I think is perhaps greater consideration, because then that impacts more of what we have to deal with in terms of stormwater quality, the pollutant loading, the erosion, all of that runoff. That's just some thoughts.
I think Stephanie's wording of it's part of how with the vision or value mechanisms makes a lot of sense. Tina, maybe there's maybe
Yeah,
that's
I think
something we
in
can
our
look at.
current plan, we have core principles, and that's not called out here, but it would be under the vision and mission, and then we have core
Yeah.
principles. And I do think it should be included there, and I think that's a really good point. So staff will noodle over that, and we can make some adjustments based on the discussion.
I had something I wanted to call out for overarching themes as well. So I won't go into the wordsmithing concepts, but I didn't, some of those bullets that I was hoping would call out to me around, pushing forward on the technology or driving advancements in water management, something more forward focused. Climate resiliency is definitely one that's forward focused, but I just was curious if there's a theme of trying to be ahead of the curve. It seems that a lot of our work that we've done is ahead of a lot of curves when you look at it. It just seems like it's part of what we do, and it seems to be a theme that we have. And I just was surprised I didn't see that in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think that should be under our organizational issues and goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess I'd characterize it as we want to remain, cutting edge and innovative and not necessarily be out in front in all cases, but be aware of opportunities that exist in terms of the science, the technology, the way that people are starting to, do things. So yeah, I for a plan, I think we definitely want to put that in there.
Yeah, we as a company we do annual planning all the time, and forward focused statements are always nice to have as themes because they're that North Star that guides something that's challenging to always achieve. So if however we all word it, I think we love that.
Yeah, and I do appreciate what Mark said. I'm not going to say we have to be at the cutting edge for everything. Fast followers are really
It's still a good place to be.
yeah, I mean, in many cases, then someone else is checking out the practicalities of what works.
Last thing on my list, there's a lot of, I know what I really appreciated is the forward that says, hey, this is going to be perceived as a rigorous prioritized list because of the bullets. And I tried my best to keep that in the thought process. What I ended up doing is I looked back at the other 10-year plan, and I did notice that, there's some common themes when you look at the resource issues. Fantastic. They were definitely ordered differently, which I thought was an interesting observation I made, although I still stand by what we came up with in the workshop. But as we work through and think through, seeing, for example, on the prior plan, wetlands was by numbering table of contents was higher up in the list as an aside. And so, I'm fine with where we landed. I just thought it would be when you did a comparison between the two, there are definitely ordering differences and grouping differences between those two.
Yeah, I don't think our past plan, and Greg, you can correct me, but I don't think the way that they were listed in the plan was the priority or priority listing.
That was my caveat earlier, Tina. I don't think either of them to be priorities. It was just when you read a table of contents, it's generally
right.
I see it.
Definitely not in the 2017 plan. But this memo tried to at least acknowledge that the sequence in the table of contents will at the very least imply a priority. And so what was presented in the memo is kind of a best guess of how it would be sequenced based on the discussion from December 10th.
Yeah,
or at least a gut feel.
In my when we do some of these things and compare one, for example, again back to my work reference and compare one versus the other, a lot of folks start with like this type of table of contents and just do a rough look. And so readability is what I was thinking in my head, not so much like priority. I'm very happy where it landed. The only thing that I will call out as a wordsmithing thing is I really can't stand operational issues. I revolt when I read that wording. So if you prefer like operational excellence, I'll take that versus operational issues, because these are things that they're not really issues. They're things that we purposely go out and do. And I think what makes us excellent. Right.
I think based on what I've heard here tonight in terms of discussion too, potentially the operational issues could be spun into more of that values type of thing, and it could be operational foci or something like that,
Just not issue.
Yeah.
But that was the only wordsmithy thing I was going to bring up tonight.
I have some more. I'm torn on this one. Under surface water quality, you pull out chloride specifically. I'm really happy, but at the same time, I'm wondering whether or not it needs to be wrapped into under stormwater management and pollutant, because it is, who knows? Tomorrow we could have another major pollutant. Not that I want, but just as a comment.
We
and
could
with-
call it contaminants of emerging concern instead of just chloride.
Yeah, and I would say the same for erosion and sedimentation too. I mean, does that, they're its own category. So,
Yeah, I think the reason that some organizations have called out chloride as a separate issue is because the management strategies for dealing with chloride differ so significantly from how we've dealt with other pollutants like sediment and phosphorus in terms of source control and other things that the approach is different. I would caveat against potentially including it with other contaminants of emerging concern, because I just think where you're at in the stage with chloride versus either microplastics or other things that might be emerging concerns is just very different in terms of the learning versus the execution.
okay.
But yes,
No,
it could
I
definitely be
appreciate that.
organized under the umbrella of stormwater management, like the surface pollutants, that sort of thing, along with sediment or phosphorus could be organized. However, right now it's just called out separately as a nod to that level of priority, like how big of an issue is it relative to the other things that you do, and it makes more sense to include it with phosphorus and with sediment and with those other pollutants as well. Then that.
Well,
that makes sense
thinking
too.
about forward-leaning things, like I think Tina's wording suggestion should probably fall somewhere maybe uniquely here. Specifically, I was thinking microplastics when you were describing the chlorides, like that's going to be a completely different treatment thing, completely different start thing. And if we're going to use that as a criteria to list all of those, maybe we just have a catch-all for things that don't have as much learning on them somehow.
Yeah, I had a little different take, and that was some of my wordsmithing. I won't go fully into it, but just to throw out that I do agree that in the state water quality standards, I guess several of us have some level of familiarity with the way they are laid out. And they're laid out in terms of conventional pollutants, the nutrients, the sediments, so forth. And then there are the kind of toxics, and that's where you get chlorides, and it's PFAS, some of the emerging other contaminants, endocrine disrupting, herbicide, pesticide. They get come up under that kind of toxics concept. So that would be another option.
Mm-hmm. And use chlorides like as an example.
Yeah. So I mean, Tina, I think your comment about emerging concerns, contaminant of emerging concerns is one way to handle it. Contaminant, I don't know, I do think it should be separate from kind of the conventional nutrients, sediments, because the response, just as you said, Greg, it is potentially very different, and oftentimes it's very wrong.
Yeah, I like that.
I can get on board in either of those ways.
Mhm.
More comment?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
And then I had some questions about, I wasn't quite sure what evaluation and assessment meant.
Evaluation and assessment, kind of self-evaluation, like is the organization doing the right thing? Are we being cost effective? Or do we need to it's like adaptive management applied to the district itself. This is partly driven by changes in the Minnesota Rules 8410 that require a biennial assessment of goal progress. Like, all right, what progress have you made towards your goals every 2 years? And also stems from comments that we heard, particularly from staff during the different workshops about things like data management. Like, how do we manage an ever increasing data set? How do we leverage AI? How do we use crowdsourcing? Different ways, different like emerging technology that's probably, pigeonholing it based on the comments that we got. But how do we optimize our how do we optimize what we do and how we approach things with evolving technology and that sort of thing? And that was sort of where that evaluation and assessment came from. It's not, again, maybe the titles aren't necessarily intuitive at this point, but that was intended to capture that strain of comments. And those comments came up with respect to regulation, with respect to BMP maintenance, monitoring, a lot of different technical areas and service areas that the district does. And so I tried to kind of collect that in one area.
Thank you. Okay, and then my last one is under funding. So I do have a wordsmith. It probably is Ramsey-Washington instead of Valley Branch.
I like that.
And then I guess the one question is it funding or maintenance of infrastructure. I mean, I see that one as kind of that's one of my concerns. That we have all this great infrastructure, and then there's a maintenance cost that's involved with making sure that's still operational. So for me, I'm not sure the funding. I'm not sure if funding was the wording that I was looking for, but are we, because this seems like it says we would, the way that this is phrased makes it seem as though if we had more money, we would be able to do more. But we have to prioritize within the constraints of what we have. For me, the bigger issue is with the funding that we have approved, how do we make sure things that we have put in place still operate?
Yeah, so like legacy costs would be more explicitly called out.
Or I'm not sure what it is, but
I think it's a titling thing, because I agree with what Stephanie's saying. The word funding is a good initial title. I think there could be obviously with a lot of these we can refine the title, because I think it gets to being a good steward and the longevity of the solutions that we put out, having to balance these priorities that she highlighted. There's something around that. But in my mind, we will need to look at some of these titles.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this one would be more about, leveraging our partnerships and our collaborations. How do we more efficiently across all of our partners' requirements do the things that we need to.
Maybe I'll look to Tina and Greg as, I think there's a lot of us chomping at the bit to help you craft some of these to add clarity and more. What's the next step, and when's the next time we'll have an opportunity to truly in earnest kind of sit down and look at it and say, oh, okay, this is what it should like. Where's that today?
Well, I think the feedback that we're looking for today is exactly what we're getting in terms of the high level, this doesn't quite feel right. This issue could be split into different areas. The distinction that was made between sort of values versus constraints among the overarching themes that. We'll have to think on that a little bit. And so I think what would happen is we'll likely take this outline, try to reorganize it based on the collective feedback that we've got today, and take a crack at some more inclusive titles, and then provide not a draft. And Tina, you can jump in if you want to correct me here, but we wouldn't provide a draft necessarily of text, But I think what we would do is provide a revised outline with some bullets underneath each of these sections of what's intended to be, what ideas are intended to be captured there.
That would be helpful.
And then essentially we'd have a workshop where you could be like real-time editing of like, no, we want to move this one up to this bullet, or this bullet doesn't really capture it. What if it said this instead of that? Almost like the next level of outline. So like kind of subject statements for the paragraphs of narrative that would go into these sections. And that would be like a workshop-based type of event where we could edit in real time.
So let me add on to my comment. So the whole concept, and we've talked about it the last couple of years, is the ongoing maintenance costs, and it just feels like it doesn't fit actually into any of these buckets. So as you look at some of that in terms of our organizational issues, focal points, goals, excellence, whatever we call it, as we continue to maintain the infrastructure, we're going to have to focus on either partnerships, funding, whatever we end up looking at. So it's not just funding in my head as we look through it. Convincing homeowners to, well, what is it called? Volunteer to clean out a storm drain has been huge, and that's a maintenance improvement. And so it's kind of my thought. Maybe it doesn't fit as its own category, but I'd like to see something about that longevity of the solution.
To me, that's another one that is going to be in multiple places. I mean, you see it in operational issues, and that's where, in my mind, maintenance would be the funding piece of it. I mean, my overall thought was this reflected our previous conversation very well as far as issues and what's in the outline, but without knowing the thought behind what's talked about in the sections, it's hard to react and say where it should go, because it's a plan is a mechanism at the end of the day. So there is no priority. As long as it's, reflected in the plan, I'm going to be pretty happy with it.
Other questions and comments? You have a hard job. You're going to get a lot of feedback. I really appreciate you being open to it, and I'm sure there will be a lot more as it goes.
That's okay. It's much better when the board have opinions and share their opinions and are passionate about things. It's a lot harder when folks are just like, "Yep, looks good," and then you just.
Yep, that is not this board. You will get feedback. I want to make sure, check around. Any other comments or questions?
I kind of a high level. This needs to be in place in 2027. Do we feel like we're probably on schedule? Really well comfortable with kind of where we're at?
I would say yes. I think yes, in the sense that I think implementation seems like it's a pretty well-oiled machine. You guys your programs are running really well, and I feel like this is better. This is almost more of like aligning, like how do we articulate what we're doing versus how do we figure out what to do to get at our values. And so in that sense, I feel like there's going to be a lot of front end work and less back end work. Whereas I think sometimes there's a lot of back end work to try and be like, well, now that we said we're going to do A, B, and C, how do we do it? And like, you guys are already, I mean, you might need to tweak some things here and there, but I think setting the path with implementation, and I maybe jumped ahead, based on the overall schedule way back when, it's sort of like we get input, we identify the priorities, we try to characterize those priorities, set goals based on them, and then look at implementation and say, okay, now that we've set these goals for these priorities, how do we get there? And I think there'll be less work in terms of timeline on that back end just because of where you guys are at. So in that sense, I think we're still okay in terms of schedule. These sort of value-based discussions can go on for a long time. So we'll have to balance consensus with progress, and sometimes a begrudging okay is as good as we get on some things.
And we use mechanisms like aligned, not aligned, but can get aligned.
Yeah.
Figure something out. Tina, when's the next workshop around this? Do you know?
Greg, I don't know what's the timing for workshop? So we can try to work on dates.
Where are we at right now? First week of January.
Yeah.
I think we wanted to do a workshop ahead of the next board meeting. Depending if that works with scheduling wise, I think we could have content developed for that.
Maybe Tina, you and I can confer offline and send out another one of those doodle polls. Or my assumption is going to be, and bear with me if this is not true, or correct me if it's not true, is right before the meeting is probably better than a separate date. Is that fair for most folks? Okay.
Are people shaking their heads? Yes. Sorry.
There's a lot of
okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think that seems to be a lot easier.
I mean, I support that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Val and I will talk offline and see if we can plan it for the next meeting. And I'll talk to Greg too. Appreciate all the feedback. And just a note too about the deadline. It's 2027, but it is April, so it's not at the first of the year. So get a few extra months there.
You know, we're goldfish. We're going to grow to that size of the schedule. So that's
yep, sure.
And your existing plan, the default is that your existing plan maintains itself in effect until your new plan is adopted. So
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say Bowser's not going to come stand at the door and barricade.
No. Oh, you're done.
I'm flying. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Again, thank you, Greg, for all of this. We'll find some time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, moving forward to manufacturing home evaluation.
That one's me. Yep. All right, so the report for the manufactured home evaluation that is in your packet is the report that was prepared and submitted to the MPCA. This is a project that we were planning on, and at the time, a year ago, we submitted a grant application to the MPCA through their resilience planning grant program. And we received the full amount, and which was great that they supported this project. We know over the years that there has been flooding in manufactured developments within Ramsey-Washington. There have been a couple of developments in particular that we've done projects in, interacted with, we've proposed projects in that maybe haven't gone forward. But the background for this was we wanted to take a step back, because as we were reflecting on some of those experiences, we sort of realized that we become aware of those issues, but not always necessarily from the residents of those communities. And so sometimes there's a barrier for reaching out, letting us know. And so we wanted to be deliberate about reaching out, making sure we understood where these communities were, making sure we weren't overlooking potential issues just because we haven't heard from members of those communities. And so because this was funded through we got funding through the MPCA for community resilience, we started by entering these conversations looking at opportunities for flood risk reduction. But it ended up being kind of a wide-ranging set of conversations that looked at opportunities for drainage improvement, water quality improvement, ecosystem health, so native plantings, wetland improvements, habitat enhancement. So it was really some wide-ranging conversations. We started by reaching out to Ramsey and Washington counties to make sure that we had a complete inventory of all of the manufactured housing developments, and there's 9 of them. Through this project, we reached out multiple times, and we received responses from 3 of them. although this project is wrapped up, the way that we had left the communication with the developments that didn't reach out to us, it was that it was open. When they're ready, we made sure that they knew about the grant programs, what the watershed does, what we have to offer, and that if they choose to reach out in the future, we're willing to work with them and have that conversation. So although we weren't able to connect with all 9 and identify potential projects, we did leave the door open.
May I ask a question? Oh,
Go ahead.
no, no,
After you.
you could.
Oh, that was one thing that jumped out at me in the report. So a question I had is that during the outreach, were we explicit in saying we're not coming in to like fine you and be government oversight, like we're here to partner and look for practical solutions?
Very much so. I think a lot what we find is oftentimes is that one of the first parts of these conversations is explaining who we are, what we do. We also, part of those conversations is saying, you know, we have grant programs, we have funding in place. We're looking for ways to find benefits for the natural resources that align with how you're using your property. And so there's a conversation there. You know, we're not looking for you to be putting in a whole bunch of dollars for a project. So it's, and then once you have that conversation, then you can almost see the excitement come. And then it goes the other direction. Like, we have to make sure these projects align with the goals of the watershed. And so there were some of those too, where you get into some of these conversations about, well, this is sort of a maintenance issue. You got to clean this out, and this drainage, issue will go away. And so we can have those conversations. Now that's not necessarily something the watershed's going to do. And so, but it certainly allows the conversation to expand pretty quickly after that point.
Building on reaching out, I saw that there's these in our watershed district. Did we get responses from the ones who have experienced flooding? Or, for example, I don't know if all of these locations have experienced flooding. There's a few on this list that I know you guys worked with already because of flooding, and I was really happy to see that they did talk to you. But I'm less familiar with Rolling Hills, which is one of the larger ones, and was curious, have they experienced flooding? To our knowledge. And if you don't have that answer, that's okay. My assumption is that there's probably flooding for more than just the couple that I know.
Of the 3 that have jumped out, and we'll talk about a couple of these here later. Certainly the community of Landfall, North Star Estates, and Five Star Estates. And Landfall and 5 Star were 2 that we had conversations with throughout. North Star, we have had several conversations with over the last, we're running together, recent years. We didn't get a response for them for this particular study, but when we had reached out to them or left off conversations with them on the previous effort, we left it with them the same way. There may be others. Those are the 3 that are I know for sure.
Just on clarification on that, Brent. So North Star Estates, because we had tried to work with them in the past, we got to kind of a certain point, and that really predated the formality of this study. Was North Star included along the way with these similar contacts?
We treated for this study, we treated all 9 the same as far as outreach goes. And so with North Star, where that project sort of, we set it down last year, a couple of years ago, we reached back out. We didn't get a response from them on this time around, but we said, when or if you're ready in the future, we'll be here and interested in the project.
My other question is, was there any involvement or attempt to involve contacts?
We did not coordinate directly with the cities on this one for two reasons. One, the counties are the entities that have the list or lists of manufactured housing developments within the county. So we started at that level. And then within each manufactured housing development, we were working directly with some cases it's the person that's the head of maintenance or the owner, but the person within that specific parcel that could essentially give us a authorization for a project. And so in some cases where the projects that they were interested in were abutting roadways, county roadways or city roadways, in that case, there was some brief reaching out, because this is still a planning phase, saying, hey, if we do this, are there sight lines that we have to be aware of? Are there planting restrictions? Are there utilities? Things like that. And so we did have some outreach as we started to gut check some of these concepts towards the end. There wasn't real close coordination with the cities just because it's a parcel that.
Yeah, I'm somewhat speculative, but had they experienced flooding in the past or other issues along those lines, I just generally would expect that they would probably contact the city, because they probably don't know about the watershed district. So
we're the property man.
By involving the city, you might have been able to tap some of that previous communication or some of that kind of level of understanding of issues. So I was curious.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the way I read the report, and correct me if I'm mistaken, is new input from a set of customers we don't typically, or a set of residents we don't typically hear from. And the second one is they have unique needs. That's the other thing that came and stood out pretty clear to me. This is really important work. I'm trying to figure out how to turn it into some good. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think for the three of these, you've got towards the end of the report, there are
project ideas,
concepts for projects, and those are projects that that we have planned for 2026.
Good.
Right. So those are ones that will move forward. Some of them will, there's a range in scale and complexity with those three as you look at those figures. So some of them may move forward quicker than others, but we do have plans this year to advance all three of them.
And I think to jump on that too, as far as our, tracking with our targeted retrofits, and this can be added into that. We usually, like maybe every other year, I'll check in with a site if I hadn't heard from them. So this could be one where we do that. It's all about finding that right person too.
Yeah.
So this will definitely be on that list.
Sometimes getting them at the right time,
Yeah.
The initial, it's like they're too busy or overwhelmed or whatever, and you come back 6 months or 2 years or whatever, and it's like, oh, yeah, I remember that, but it just didn't happen. Sure, let's try to do something.
Yeah.
What did you, after your conversations with these folks, was of these three, was there, what sort of pool did you feel? Were they interested or equally interested?
Yeah, with these three. Yep, I would say very interested. As Brandon said, as soon as we said, this would be watershed funded, when you start talking high level, they see these dollar signs and going through all the other things they need to fund. So that was early on in our conversations, made clear to them that's something we would look at funding. So very supportive. The 30/20, you will actually be working with an adjacent property owner. That's the Women's Care Center. It's under construction right now. So they were very interested in doing a joint restoration effort there. 5-Star we just met with mid-December, and they were very excited to see what we come back with.
Just a question on the map. So your icons of the different colored homes, there's the red all the way to the blue, showing the impacted structures, potentially impacted structures. So am I reading it right that the dark blue are the ones that have a 1 in 2 chance of getting impacted? Is that?
Yeah,
okay.
they are That's right. The frequent event. So this is the 4-day duration, 2-year, 4-day duration event.
Okay.
Would impact those structures. So blue are the lower homes, and then the red are maybe that color gradation color should get flipped, but the red ones are the ones that they're in a floodplain, but the very, very large events, the 500-year floodplain are the red ones.
And again, if I heard correctly, so in 2026, we'll continue flushing it out. We're not waiting for any necessarily MPCA grants. We're just going to go through and possibly fund it through the targeted retrofit.
Yeah, I think at this point, or flood risk reduction, yeah, this grant is closed. I did submit, you know, as Brandon said, this to PCA, so they had a few comments, so I'm working on that final submittal. But we could keep our eye out for other future grants as well.
It kind of depends on the site you're looking at.
Yeah.
Because the one at Landfall, that site, we did submit another planning grant for land that would include that landfall. That's the last presentation item in the packet this month. And so that one, the schedule is to be determined, but because if we get the grant, we'd wait to make sure we can leverage those grant funds. But if we're unsuccessful with the grant, we'd go through and do the feasibility study on that still this year.
Thank you.
Another kind of high level question, somewhat speculative again, is did you have a sense in meeting with these? They are all obviously unique, have their own independent kinds of situations. But I'm curious, is there any kind of communication across these manufactured homes such that, you know, they're an association or anything like that, such that, hey, if we do have some positive inroads, some success with projects, that might then get communicated to others, and warm them up, and kind of grease the skids, as it were?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think that the short answer, not that I'm aware of.
Right.
There are a couple that are managed by the same company.
Okay.
I think 2 or 3 of them, but
Oftentimes it comes down to exactly that. That's been, in some cases, a hurdle is, you know, these are sites where they can use use that land in a certain way, and you want to make sure it's allocated for that, and they don't want to entertain the discussion for native plantings or some cases. Now, the one in Landfall, they walked us right back and they said, we can't put a home on this site. It frequently has water on it. What can you do with this area? Does this area do anything for you? Can you get any benefit out of it? So that was, it was refreshing because it's surprising. So
they kind of got what you were looking for.
Well, they got what we were looking for, and it's not oftentimes that you hear that, right? Because a lot of times they're managing a development where they have lots that they're trying to put homes on. So it was a good part of the conversation.
And with that, to your earlier question, Mark, it's City of Landfall. So we met with City Landfall staff because they manage all that. So maybe that was a difference too. They know where we're coming from.
I'd love to see some short-term wins for this population of residents. And so however Work with the Willing seems like it's helped us in the past, I'd love to see us continue that. It does feel to me that you highlighted, hey, there's some other things that I need assistance with. There's probably adjacent things just to help walk them through in terms of maintenance that maybe isn't ours. But yeah, very happy this is going down. I'm excited to see what 26 is. I've shared this before and it's fine publicly, but my kids go to school with a handful of kids in 2 of these mobile parks. So I would love to see living improvements. Any other comments or questions on the new reports presentation? Specifically 10B. Keep it going.
Next one up.
Yep, 10C. Yeah, that's also yours, and I have
10C is a memo on kind of the status update for the outlet operation for Lake Valen and Keller Creek. This work that was done in 2025, we were doing quite a bit of coordination with the National Weather Service. We were laying the groundwork for taking that next step to really integrating the work that was done this year and the current system to be able to go automated. And so the work that was done this year was we worked with the Weather Service. There's a dedicated site for this watershed that has, I think it's a 4-day or 5-day advanced rainfall forecast. We only look at the 24-hour forecast, but it's rolling. So it's a kind of a cool link. You can go see what's coming, and it's been good to see it working. We also tested it. It continues to update during shutdowns. It continues. We had a hiccup in our code that we got to fix during daylight savings time, and so it's been good to coordinate with them to work out some of these debugging things throughout the year. They've been wonderful to work with. Very, very responsive.
You give me flashbacks to like the 2000 concern. Yeah, sorry.
We also took the operation plan that the DNR had approved and that we follow for these outlets and put it in our system, tied it to the lake monitor, lake level stations, so that our system will send us an alert, Ramsey-Washington staff, bar staff an alert if the gates need to be adjusted per the approved operation plan. And we know that works because this summer the gates had to be operated, and just so happened we were debugging the code during that time, and the person was looking at us, "Hey, did you guys move these gates?" I said, "Yep, Dave was on it." So anyways, that code is written, and it's in a format where for the next step would be next year, we would coordinate with In Control. They're the company that set up the computer, the controls there, where they can modify their code to read in essentially the Excel file. That was the format that they requested it in, to read in the Excel file that sends the alert, and then everything could be done through their In Control system. So then the question for automation would be, where do you put that fail safe, right? So when I say automation, I mean the intent is that everything goes such that Dave, Eric don't have to go in and set the elevation and hit open. It says, okay, the system would say, you need to adjust these gates and these weirs, okay, and they can approve it, or they can override it and say no. But that way, at the end of this, that's sort of the end of the road here. It takes away from 3-4 plus years ago, where we had these emergency response plans and district staff were reading rain gauges daily and then having to go out and make decisions on, do we need to notify residents or do we need to take action? And so this way everything's automated, everything's online, and they still have that override, but now part of the risk, I think, with these active managed systems is we design them so that they don't have to be operated very frequently. So it's not always top of mind. And so by making the alerts, making everything continue to function in the background, when it does have to operate, have to work, it'll pop that information up. So after we put it,
very geeky question.
Yeah, please.
What is your validation strategy for this? How are we going to ensure points are working? And maybe it's as simple as we have a test strategy that we've planned. I'm comfortable with that. I don't need the details. And just, my experience has taught me to always question Excel spreadsheets as an input-output calculator.
Yeah.
And so what is your test strategy itself?
The testing the strategy that was implemented earlier this year, because it's up and running right now. We took a time series of lake levels and months, and we modified it so we knew going in when the code should tell us it has to operate and when it shouldn't. And
as part of the story with Dave that you talked about earlier that found an issue.
Yeah.
Are you doing it like periodically? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yes. The intent with this and the intent with the operation plan has always been after we get through a point where we have to actually open and close these gates, we go back to the spreadsheet, go back to the model and go, good. Not only did the notifications come through as they were planned, but did the lake levels respond as the way that the stormwater model predicted they would? And so in 2026, we have plans to go and do just that, because we had that first time where we had operated. So long answer to your question, last year we ran a artificial time series through to do debugging. 2026 here, we'll go back through and check the stormwater model. We'll check the time series again periodically just to make sure it's working.
Building on this notion, we all know the concept of garbage in, garbage out. We have some lake monitoring situations where they don't always work. I assume we had a budget item for improving and focusing on that. I know. How critical is getting that infrastructure up to date to fully operationalize this?
This one relies on the Spoon Lake gauge.
Okay.
That one.
Yeah.
That one. And that one has been working for quite some time. There is a backup. I think it's on failing. Anyway, the Spoon one is the one that, so if we're having problems with lake gauges on Owasso or other parts there, this still functions.
Thank you. It does seem to prepare for the future where more of this happens. We are going to need to make sure that infrastructure is very solid in terms of the lake gauge monitors. But I'm happy it's on the Spoon Lake one. I'd love to see the notification go from email to text message. There's multiple services that'll do that for you, but neither here nor there. Later,
we can do that. We've come a long ways. At Jarvis and at Tanner's, it used to be an automated station that would call out, and it called out to the different cities, and some had beepers, some had cell phones, and it would call out. And there's stories of city staff taking their cell phones in the middle of the night and putting them in the porch because it was a false notification. So we've come a long way. We still have a ways to go, but yes, point taken.
Any comments or questions? I could geek out on this for another 30 minutes, but I'm just gonna
No, I think it's looking good. Progress is moving forward. We're getting better, and it'll continue to improve.
I mean, going back to the plan, like this is, we don't have to be cutting edge on everything, but I do think this is really leading. I really like where this is headed, and I'd love to see more of it. Cool. Thank you, Brandon.
I'm gonna keep.
You have 10D and 10E.
I do.
Keep on rolling.
I'll give you my elevator speeches.
I should
if you'd like.
I should really highlight though, like this is for information.
Yes, these next two are project work plans. Yeah. So this is work that we're about to start. Both I'll lump these two together. Both of these two we submitted grant applications to the MPCA through their climate planning resilience program. The first one is for it includes remaining site characterization tasks and then through final design for a flood risk reduction project just south of Ames Lake. Ramsey-Washington staff and BAR have been talking with the St. Paul Housing Redevelopment Authority quite a bit over the last several months. And in December, this project was presented at the HRA two board meetings they had in December, and the second one in December, they essentially approved our project on their parcels. So that was really exciting. They've been working through a process of trying to figure out what they're going to do with their vacant parcels. And got to the point where this one, staff was really excited about it. The St. Paul council member, the ward for this neighborhood, was extremely excited about it at their meeting. They had a lot of very complimentary things to say about the watershed and our involvement with Ames Lake just to the north. And so they're very, very excited about this. And we've got the green light to go ahead with the project. So that one is the Ames Lake project. The schedule of this one, it starts now. You'll see both of these run through June of 2027. That's just the grant schedule. A lot of these, the schedule end up being accelerated. The second one, just to knock them both out maybe at once, is related, is very similar to the Phelan Keller project we had just talked about. So we have there is an emergency response plan for low homes on Tanner's Lake. That's been in place since at least 2005. There's also an emergency response plan for Weir Drive and Woodbury. Weir Drive flood, and that's the only way to get to a number of residences. So this project is looking at modifications to the Tanner's Lake outlet and Battle Creek Lake outlet to put in actively adjusted control structures to optimize storage in those lakes to reduce flooding at both of those locations. This project also dovetails in the improvements in landfall that we talked about a few updates ago. And so the city of Landfall was very excited about that as well. And it so happened as part of our conversations with Landfall and said we got to introduce this project to them and let them know that we were looking at a feasibility study for the Tanner's Lake outlet. They were very supportive of that conversation. So we'll continue to work with them through this. So we'll pause there, and if there's questions on either one of those.
I didn't make this mental connection when I was reading the two. So this covers some of what was proposed in manufactured homes. Right?
Yeah, the landfall one.
The landfall.
The landfall one gets rolled into this one, and then I think the other two are separate.
Appreciate that connection.
I have a couple of questions on the Tanner's Lake, Battle Creek.
Sure.
And there was reference made to if those outlets are modified, there's the potential that more water then would be directed downstream, and Battle Creek itself is listed as impaired for sediments, and there hasn't been I don't remember, but an adequate study of Battle Creek itself in terms of how to address that TSS and the fact that it could accelerate or make things worse. I'm curious if in the scoping of this, if there's been any consideration about the floodplain and potential of Battle Creek itself, and whether or not there might be some potential of meanders or enhanced floodplain connections, whatever. And this might touch on another project we talked about at a previous meeting about creek projects and creek restorations. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
the creek itself.
Yeah, so two things. One, there is because the PCA grant was set up for the language, it focuses on flood resiliency. That's where we lump these together for that application. There is another project we're planning for 2026 that focuses on water quality for Battle Creek. And both this project and that project, the timing of them was postponed into 2026 because we were waiting for, remember last year, district staff did some pretty intensive monitoring along Battle Creek. And one of the reasons for that was to try to make sure we understood where the TSS sediment loading was coming from.
Yeah.
So with this project, it's a little bit different from Phelan Keller in the sense that it does go into a creek, it doesn't go into a pipe. So it means there's an opportunity not only for looking at flooding, but also there might be an opportunity to explore how these outlets are operated and provide a water quality benefit for the creek. And so that's something that we'll be taking a look at as part of this study. And of course, there'll be lots of conversations with the DNR about what can and can't be done when we start looking at low flows as well. As we get into that.
Well, also in this, just kind of educational for me, there's reference to, I think in Atlas 15, volume 1, volume 2.
Yep.
Volume 1 is that existing, and volume 2 is that potential future. What
Nothing
volume?
exists yet.
The whole concept of volume, yeah, that's new to me.
So it is new. At current industry standards for precipitation depths to use for design are summarized under what is referred to as Atlas 14. Specifically for Minnesota, it's Atlas 14 Volume 8. The volumes in Atlas 14 were just a way, because they did the country in parts. So everything was published sort of piecemeal. Atlas 15 is the next iteration that will supersede Atlas 14. And so there's two big changes with that, 2 or 3 big changes that are coming. One is that it extends the period of record. So it uses from 2011 all the way through 2021. The second thing is that they're changing the methodology just a little bit to acknowledge the changing climate, changing precipitation patterns since the early 1900s to 2021 to account for that. So there's a subtle change there. The volume 1 refers to, they're publishing the whole country at once. Volume 1 just refers to, okay, based on the historical rainfall, here are the design rainfall depths that you should be using now moving forward. Volume 2 are factors. You can evaluate what different climate change scenarios, global temperature increases, or global development scenarios, and you can see how the precipitation depths will increase. And so you can choose to use those depths to look at, okay, is your project designed for some point way into the future? The draft of Atlas 15 was supposed to be released in 2025. Current estimates here are that the draft, we're expecting it to be early spring here, 2026. As far as we know, as far as NOAA's updated us, they're still intending to finalize that, at least the final version yet later this year, at the end of the year. So it is coming. We'll find out this spring how big of a change that means for us and our projects, but you'll start seeing Atlas 15 because we're now pivoting to start referencing current standards, or standards that will become current.
Thank you. That's great background.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Curious, Brandon, the grant totals, are they reflected in the total price that we have here, or is there buffer?
The prices that are in the work plan,
grant
so the plan, the dollars that are in the work plans are what was requested.
Okay.
Or no, I shouldn't say that. The prices that are here are the total project dollar amount that was included in the grant application. The grant provides the 90% funding, and then we, if we're successful, we provide the 10% match. But the dollars here are estimated total.
Thank you. Wasn't clear in my head. Thank you. Any other questions on item 10D or E? Excited to see the progress report just goes through.
And the grant announcement is spring time?
Remember?
That one is spring.
It's spring. I mean, when in the spring, we don't know.
Yeah.
The manufacturer, I mean, we look back, the manufactured housing project was under that same grant program. I think we were notified in March, and by the time we got a contract, we started in April, May. So we're sort of speculating that that's probably something like that.
There been, I don't know how long, maybe 2 or 3 years, the PCA has had these climate resiliency and funding. Have they commented if more applicants are showing up? It's the competitive, competition getting, because we've been pretty successful in the past.
Yeah, they did comment that this is the last year they're planning on the planning grants. Last year there was also an implementation grant that came through federal dollars that wasn't offered this year. So I'm not sure what the next year will bring, but they did say that this is sort of the remaining pennies I think they used in their bucket.
From the federal dollars.
Well, this one I think is state dollars. The implementation one, that one ran out, but so this was all in budgeted.
you very much. Moving to item 11. Paige or Tina is going to deliver the admin report.
I think Tina, she has her voice.
Yeah,
Not
Yeah,
counting.
I do.
just wanted to
Thank you
check.
Yeah, sorry for not being in there in person. Happy New Year, everyone. I got a cold for the new year, so, and I didn't want to bother the Zoom with my cough all night. But you know, the administrative report is a little late, you know, short time between, and then it was the holidays. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything. Otherwise, yeah, we're looking forward to another year.
Questions? Thank you very much. Moving forward to item, any questions for Tina? I apologize. No, okay, didn't make the wrong assumption. Okay, moving forward to item number 12. Per usual, we'll just start at A and kind of cruise down. My first question is on B. We've been talking about the TSS and TMDL expectations. Any sense on when those are going to be rolled out? If I'm remembering correctly, Tina, maybe I got the wrong water BMP. I could have sworn there was some regulation enforcement that was supposed to be coming.
I'm sorry, which item was this for?
B.
South Metro Mississippi, TMDL.
Yeah.
And what, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, Tina, I remember we've been shoring up and looking at this for a bit in anticipation for some sort of enforcement or some sort of request for how things are going, or am I getting that confused with the Beltline project?
No, I think you're probably right, but it's all in the MPCA's hands. So we're getting our numbers ready so that when they ask us to report, we're ready to go.
Yeah, it felt like it's been like that for at least half a year, maybe a year.
At least, yeah, a couple of years now.
Couple of years, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
so no word on or signals from them.
Actually, oh,
Yeah, they did release a draft. This is
okay.
part of the MS4 permit.
Okay.
They released a draft for pre-public notice. So staff are reviewing and are going to compile comments.
Okay.
And then there'll be another public notice.
That's for the MS4 permit, Nicole?
Yeah, because that, if I'm understanding correctly, because that reporting is part of the.
That's what I don't remember the right report structure. I just know we were waiting for some changes.
Yeah, so the South Mississippi TMDL, I don't think they're ready for us to report yet, but when we do, yeah, we would report through our MS4 reporting.
Thank you. Just wanted to see if there was an impending deadline or something has changed in that. Okay.
Yeah.
My next question's on G.
D.
You have something in D? Perfect. After you.
Yep, D and E actually. Looking at D, there's reference in the summary about requests from the city, and I'm curious what cities have reached out.
Yeah, so this one, D, was emergency response plans. We met with, these are sites or habitable structures that were identified as potentially flood prone and located, or the flooding is affected by more regional drainage, inter-community jurisdictional drainage. And so we met with Maplewood, Oakdale, Woodbury.
Yeah.
And all three cities were essentially very receptive. The conversations were very similar to the conversations we had with cities that were in the north part of our watershed. A lot of them, they were areas that they were aware of. They acknowledged, though, that staff usually have a lot of responsibilities during a flood event, and so they weren't looking to take that next step, formalize a plan or make a commitment, but they appreciated sharing the information and that they would distribute that internally as they see fit for emergency responders. A lot of the follow-up requests were asking for confirmation on what we had as emergency overflows. Oakdale was doing a street improvement project in the area and looking to lower EOFs around some of those houses, and wanted to make sure that, one, we had it right in our model, and two, we're asking what would this do. Maplewood, we were resending, Maplewood was in both, so we were resending them the information that we had sent them previously. And so it was just kind of miscellaneous tying up, buttoning up kind of questions that are specific to those sites. There wasn't any, I would say there wasn't any surprises in that discussion.
I mean, you've been working with these cities on some of these flood prone,
all of them.
Structures.
Right? Yep.
For all the flood resiliency work, going back by 5 years plus. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
The wording in the summary kind of left me wondering, what city?
Yeah, a lot of their follow-up requests, I'd say, were very specific to what's this elevation or this overflow. So my generalization in there.
E
Sure.
Is the flood, again, another flood reduction project. This one is Roseville Central Park. And if someone could remind me, there's reference in the summary about the first project maybe raising a trail. And I'm curious, I think, little familiarity I have with Central Park. Dale divides it, kind of east of Dale, west of Dale. Are we talking, which side of Dale with the flood trail?
We're talking west of Dale.
Yeah.
It is, the city was, so that area or that part of the park consisted really of two components. One was a trail raise, and that was the biggest one, where the city would store additional floodwater within the park. And then the second one is there's a railroad, a culvert underneath a railroad, where there's head loss that also backs up water before it gets to Lake Owasso. And so those were the two primary components. Right now, the draft report has been shared with the city of Roseville. They're discussing it internally. They're going to get back to us on whether or not they want to go ahead and do one or both of those components themselves. And they're going to basically, we want to make sure that what we're showing for those potential modifications aligns with what the city's intended use of the area is. And so we're holding off finalizing that report until after we get final comments from the city. We've been talking with the city all along. Yeah. This is one of those, just now that we have the whole thing laid out, all the figures pulled together, we just want to make sure there's not something that pops up.
Just one, if it is to the west and maybe to the very far west, where it joins that railroad, there is a existing, has been for some years now, I believe it may be the only known population, or one of only a couple of known populations of parsnip. So if we're going to be exposing soil and so forth, just be aware of that, and we don't want to spread it.
Good to know. Yeah. I suspect the only, we're waiting on input from the city, but the first thing that would move forward would be well within the park areas. But that's good. Good to know.
Oh,
yeah. I'll jump to G. On the creek stabilization design and highest priority stuff, we had already talked about Battle Creek. I assume that's is that a different type of project from the project stemming from stabilization? Just was curious.
It is. So the Battle Creek project came about as a flood risk reduction project. That was that one. This is one district staff complete creek walks, and they've walked 4 of the 5 creeks last fall. There's Battle Creek and Snake Creek to walk yet this spring, and so they've got photos and observations of
Like
bank failure,
blockages.
down trees, bank failures, erosion, and so now we've got all of this data, and we're working through going, okay, well, we've got all of these locations. How are we going to rank and compare these relative to each other to make a decision and say, okay, this is where this is important. No, this one's not changing, or this one's not important. And we're talking about how do we leverage some of the tools that have already been developed for prioritizing. Those tools aren't necessarily specific to creeks, and so it's trying to.
I don't know if they even have the I don't know how long back creek walk data exists.
We're working through that.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I think part of it is how can we organize this such that as data comes in, you can start to overlay and go, oh, what's changed? And
I really like that about the inspection records, because over time you can say, okay, this has changed. And I just don't know if we have. I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm interested in how we're going to figure out, oh, this is a quality or a conveyance problem, or both, or whatever.
This started as. Go ahead, Tina.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we do have creek. We've been walking the creeks every other year for going in probably 20 years, but we optimized our inspection forms, so some of the format of the data isn't the same, but we definitely have some reference points.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, Tina. As I look through, I couldn't recall a large amount of discussion around the creek data. I knew walks occurred. I just wasn't sure, and I'm very familiar with the inspection mechanisms that we've used, and so I just would love to see where this goes. And it sounds like we're starting in 2026, and that's where I was curious. Like, does that mean we're starting projects, or does that mean we're starting just the discussion and focus?
I think with this one, it's the identifying that framework, that comparison.
Okay, so this is a framework and mechanism.
Yeah, and this gets, I mean, part of this discussion goes back, I think, Mark, you had a comment when we did the County Road C project. You said, gosh, there's this place where there's bank failures right downstream. And at that point in time, rather than start to expand the extent of that project, we said, well, there's no risk in it, a catastrophic failure right now. Let's gather all this data to make sure that we're putting resources in the location that rises to the top of this list. And so this is the way to, and we're starting to put that framework together to answer that question, to say, okay, yes, that maybe that is at the top of the list, or nope, that's here and somewhere else is.
And just to make the kind of a crossways connection, I think on the action log, we talked about some shoreline kind of assessments, and we're maybe just a little bit ahead with the creek work, but it seems like there's still kind of new developing kinds of areas for us to be working in. And so it sounds like you guys are, thinking about past data and how do we make that kind of consistently summarized and then process that to develop some priorities. So that sounds like a good process, at least initially.
My next question's on K. It's not really a question. Let me just say, I'm happy y'all applied to the NPC if it's the grants. I'll leave it at that. We already talked about it. I just realized my comment was like, great job on completing these applications. I knew it was December 11th. Yeah, so sorry.
We like those comments.
Okay. I already made the comment about lake monitoring stuff. Next one's on Q. Any questions or comments on before Q?
I was just gonna mention with Roosevelt Homes, I think you all saw that email that Mary nominated us for the MICA Environmental Excellence Award, so we have a group going down in a couple weeks to accept that. It's exciting.
On the stewardship grant programs, as we've engaged the city of Woodbury to discuss opportunities, any feedback that's ready to be shared? If not, I'll wait for next week.
Yeah, I don't know if Ashley's still here. Oh, there she is.
Still here. We have met with the city of Woodbury. They don't collect a lot of specific data on any of the existing systems. But we do have, we'll probably be using some video / imagery to document effectiveness and presumably the lack of, or not the reduced use of salt or lack of salt use in those areas. So, and then using that to inform on, as the new system is built and installed, what might they implement in their monitoring that way. So not super specific, I know, not super helpful, but it was interesting to hear from like the city staff that we installed these and they're part of other systems and that's just how they're maintained. They don't really pull that kind of information out specifically. So they're working on their end to see if, what they can get out of their staff, but most of their salting practices on those sidewalks are by like safety, building like maintenance and safety staff versus parks or public works. So it's been interesting trying to see who the actual responsible parties are. But definitely a good conversation, and we'll be using those images, I think, to see how they can implement actual and how we can work with them on monitoring for the new system.
Yeah, I'd love, we've had spirited discussions about heated sidewalks and their return on investment. And so it'd be really to hear what you guys find as we look at the pictures, specifically as it looks as a chloride reduction mechanism. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a comment on W, and then I'll probably jump down to the Waterfest one, unless somebody has something before W. As you guys did the Minnesota Watersheds Annual Conference, we did our thing with the board from the learnings of those who attended. I realized in that conversation, I forgot to ask the staff, and I know the staff did a lot of presentations, I know the staff attended to a bunch of things. Is there a place where y'all have summarized y'all's learnings? I'd love to hear about them at some point. Don't need to drain it today, but I'd love to just hear about it. I have some wonderful notes from my fellows here, board members who got to attend, but not from y'all.
Yeah, we just did a verbal discussion at our staff meeting after the conference. But I could probably summarize some things and include it in the packet next month for you.
Yeah, I think I just a lot of passion came out of the watershed conference from the discussion, and a lot of good learning. And I know you guys have it all the time. So yeah, I just especially thinking about plans and these other discussions coming up, I'd love to just hear it.
Sure.
I'm thinking 2 or 3 bullets, nothing major.
Yeah, can do that.
And sorry for not asking at the time. That's on me. Waterfest planning.
On the W, I saw that staff attended Lake Wabasso HOA meeting. Just wondering what kind of outcome.
Probably Pat or.
Yeah, Pat and Eric attended the meeting, or not Pat, I'm sorry, Paul and Eric attended the meeting. And neither of them are on, but what I can tell you is that they said it was a really good meeting, and they had some really good discussion around the perceptions of the quality of the lake versus the realities. They had good discussions with the DNR as well about managing plant communities. And so Paul felt very encouraged as they move forward with their plan. They were getting a lake vegetation management plan approved with the DNR. And so there was some good discussion around that as well. That's something that they wanted all the residents, the association residents, to understand, because they would be asking for funding from their residents to complete that management plan. And they were, asking about district funds. So we talked about the use of harvesting or shoreline restoration, those kinds of opportunities as well.
I know a few of the residents on the lake, and I was told very similar feedback. There is some consistent confusion on what the DNR does versus what we do. That came across, and I think Tina summarized there's also a lack of clarity on what causes what, and so they felt it was a great conversation. They actually, from the conversations I've had, would love to see y'all again.
Oh, great. That's good to hear. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of confusion, or there's just some clarifying about how water flows through that, how the outlet works, those kinds of things too. So Ramsey County was there, and we were there, and the DNR. So I think that was a really good grouping of people to kind of address all their concerns.
The president afterwards. Hey, jumping to any other comments or questions for the watercress planning? Just curious, how were the conversations about using that recreation center?
Yeah, we have some good news on that. We're still working out all the details, of course, but we did get some clarification on what the footprint of the construction would be, and it was very narrow to just the pavilion and a little bit of the concrete work around it, which leaves all of the grass and open and the trails. Everything else is available. So we've been having some discussions with St. Paul about moving the vendors to large tent opportunities, kind of closer to the Lakeside Center, where we would have the bouncy house in the past. It's adjacent to the Lakeside Center parking lot, where we could have the food trucks either there, or the parking lot at the pavilion is also available. So we have opportunities. I know the Voyager canoes is one of the biggest highlights, and their really only launch point is down at the creek. So we're looking at how we can wrap that event around the pavilion, and still use the spaces that we've used in the past. We're working on our communication to our vendors that will go out in February. So we're going to get some of those details figured out, and then make sure we communicate well with them so that they understand the conditions that they'll be in. There won't be electricity or like a water source, like a plumbing source. We'll have to have porta potties, things like that. But Maddie, our event planner, thinks that, budget wise, we won't have to pay for the pavilion. So it should cover the tents, porta potties, and other things that we have to amend because of that. Tables, because we'll probably need to rent more tables. So it's in the works, but we really wanted to try and keep it next to the lake if we could. The rec center is, across the street, and we really wouldn't have access easily to the lake. So that's the path we're exploring right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any words or comments from the CAC, from those who might have attended? Seems like a good review. No?
Under the communications, I did Lauren isn't on, doesn't look like, but I'm just really pleased with, and I want to give a lot of thanks to the whole Get Gritty. That's, that seems like it's a great thing, and maybe we can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Ashley.
I've seen it get picked up in a few different places. Yeah, Ashley, you've been pretty involved with it.
Yeah, Ashley has been pretty involved. I don't know if you want to give any updates or.
Yeah, it's been super successful. We Frattallone's, I believe, is out at pretty much every store location. We've offered additional funding, but they're actually having issues with supply, so they're not being able to get the grit. So they're done for the season. Whatever's left on their stores, will go out. But yeah, we've had really good feedback from everyone. So fully anticipate doing it again.
Yes.
Having used grit on my own driveway during the freezing rain, it's quite nice.
Yep.
Wonderful. Manager comments next month's meeting. Any comments concerning that? We just to follow up on what we talked about earlier, Tina and I will talk about where the workshop is. Seems like it might be good for us to tentatively just talk about it for next February. Like February, we'll just do it beforehand, but talk with Greg, or Tina will talk to Greg. Any other comments? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I have a second. Meetings adjourned. Thank you all.
Yeah, good night, everyone.
Feel better,
Good
Tina.
night. Good evening.
Thanks, everybody.